It is really my honor and privilege to introduce Renee. And I want to thank a fellow longtime Leadership Forum community member, Alicia Mandel, who many years ago said, "Hey, Steve, you should call Renee. I think you two would be a little bit simpatico." And I dearly want to thank Alicia for that because Renee ended up coming up to Silver Bay and did a masterful session for us in up there live, and it was a lot of fun. I She is the founder of Wisdom Works, and also I don't think you can really see this, but I love this book. It's Driven by Wealth, and wealth is WLLTH, and it's the 7 essentials for healthy, sustainable results in the 21st century business and leadership. I always considered Renee a little bit ahead of her time. She's helped a lot of individuals with resiliency, and she really has helped individuals, teams, and organizations really create cultures that thrive in the times of just tumultuous turmoil and constant change. One quick little personal story about the impact, and I don't know if Renee even knows this, but many years ago I was still in the corporate environment, and it was late afternoon, it was about 3 o'clock, and I was just getting up to go get a cup of coffee to get juiced up a little bit when bing, I had mail, and I could see it was Renee's blog. So I took the time to read it, and I won't go through the whole story, but she was recounting that she was working with an executive client who was getting some feedback that they were not really respecting. He wasn't really respecting his people anymore. He seemed to be not listening and things like that. And the long story short was Renee said, don't beat yourself up. He admitted that he had gotten into some bad habits and wasn't doing some healthy things. And so one of the things was he was drinking an excessive amount of caffeine. And Renee said, hey, take it one step at a time. Just take one less cup tomorrow. And the next day, one less cup. And that's what he did. And he ended up, getting back on track. And so I was headed at 3 o'clock. And she said, also, don't have any in the afternoon, have an apple instead. I had been heading downstairs to get a cup of coffee. Instead, I had an apple. And all those years since, Renee, I've never had the caffeine in the afternoon. So I want to thank you for teaching me some healthy leadership habits that hopefully have helped me become a little bit more resilient. As we've indicated through both Matt and myself, we're going to really kind of pay attention to the title of what we're doing today. These are leadership conversations. And so rather than a traditional webinar where somebody comes in, shows a bunch of really flashy uh, PowerPoint slides, Renee is offered to take our questions because some of us still, face some challenges as we go through the pandemic. It's great seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but we probably have some things we want to talk about. So without further ado, Renee knows that we are a community that loves to dialogue. So let the dialogue begin. And Renee, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate being here, and I had never heard that story, Steve. So I did not know that you never know some of the tiny little things that you might say or do and what impact it might be having on other people. And I think that's kind of the heart of leadership. How can we be the kind of leaders that not only create the conditions where others thrive, but where we also show up as a role model the best we can, knowing that every one of us are on a journey. It's just all a journey. There's not a state we're arriving to. It really is all a journey. As Steve mentioned, years ago, I got the opportunity to be a part of the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay. It was quite an incredible experience. I think that was the year too when there was no air conditioning at all. I know there's not normally, but it was the hottest ever on record. And so we just spent the whole 4 days sweating. But we had a great time, great dialogues, and if I remember correctly, I had the group doing a lot of yoga, which is I wish we could be doing here together today. It was a lot of fun. Today we're going to be talking about the COVID environment, the volatility it's thrown us into, the complexity, the uncertainty, and what pain we are noticing out of it, what pain and suffering we've really been noticing, as well as what possibilities. So what Steve asked is, can we do something where we have absolutely no slides And given, I know all of us have probably been on Zoom a lot for the last year and a half with a lot of slides, I said, yes, no slides would be awesome for me personally. So I'm going to do a little practice with us, just a closed eye breath practice with us, just to get us in the here and now, into the present moment. But then we're going to quickly move into some breakout groups. So one of the benefits I know of a community like this is being able to talk with each other and connect in a more intimate way. So we're going to have about a 10-minute breakout session. We're going to be talking about, the suffering that we're noticing, because all of us around the world who have been through something collectively in a way that we've never experienced before. And I always remind myself of that this is something that we haven't had in our being before. And there's a lot of pain and suffering. So we want to talk about that. We're going to come back then and hear what you all talked about in your groups. Then we're going to shift and talk about what new pathways for evolution and well-being we're also noticing, because that's happening too. Both are always happening at the same time. In the middle of the suffering, there's always new opportunities for well-being and for resetting our lives and our organizations and our work and ourselves, our inner being. And then we'll end with a practice, and we'll be done right on time. So is everyone okay with that as a plan? Thumbs up? Awesome. Got some hand claps. I couldn't hear them, but I'm going to assume that that's all good. All right, so go ahead and push yourself back from wherever you are. If you are looking into your computer right now, if you even take, I'm at a standing desk. I actually like to take my fingers and literally push my standing desk a couple of millimeters, just as a ritual of saying, I am disconnecting with the computer. So wherever you are, some of you I know are in your car. If you happen to be driving, don't do this. Don't do a closed-eyed practice. You can just listen. Close your eyes, or if that doesn't feel comfortable today, find a stationary point on which to rest your gaze. And I'm going to close my eyes. And for a moment, just notice that simple act of closing your eyes. What sense of presence, what quality of awareness that brings just by that simple action. Bringing your attention to the muscles around your eyes. Allow those muscles to soften as if your eyeballs could gently rest back in the sockets. And let that attention move down to your cheeks, your jaw, maybe even slightly parting your teeth, or allowing your tongue to rest on the floor of your mouth. This is an area that we do a lot of work that doesn't need to be working at all right now. Allowing a sense of relaxation to move into the face, the head, the neck. And becoming aware of your breath. For a moment, noticing how the inhalation moves into the body, maybe with coolness, or maybe that comes to you in the form of a light, a color, an energy. Just notice that inhalation. And then noticing the exhalation. And again, that simple act of awareness, you may have started lengthening your breath. So go ahead and with that, lengthening the inhalation and lengthening the exhalation. Now let your awareness drop from all your to-do list, all the things you've got planned for the day, or worries. Let that awareness drop into the space around your heart. And if it helps, put one or both hands right there in the space on top of the heart, as if you could breathe in and out of the heart. The seat of appreciation, the seat of gratitude, the seat of connection. And become aware of something that you are grateful for now that you have made it here. You arrived to this session. You've made it through a year and a half of a pandemic. No matter where you are on your own journey, you are here. In this present moment, with all your resilience, with all your own suffering, with all the possibilities before you. In the middle of the here and now. And if your hands are on top of your heart, go ahead and drop those hands, becoming aware of the sounds in the room around you. Once again, becoming aware of your breath. And if your eyes are closed, let's gently open your eyes. Just bringing your sense of gratitude and full presence to the room. We're going to have our first breakout session. It'll be about 10 minutes long. You'll be in random groups. Matt's going to put us in groups of 4. And the question I'd like for you to be answering with each other is what pain and suffering, we'll move to possibility later, but what pain and suffering is evident today, given everything we've been through in this global pandemic, what pain and suffering is evident today. And you might think about that in your own life. You might think about that in your family, your neighborhood or community, your region, your country. You know, go as wide or as narrow as you would like to go. The only thing I request is that everyone get a chance to speak. And this is really about listening to each other. This is not a problem-solving hour. This is about an hour of listening and hearing what's going on for people, with all of us. So if you find yourself someone else speaking and you find yourself going, oh, I know what you can do about that, just stop yourself in the moment, just notice it, stop yourself in the moment. Remember, none of us are problems to be fixed, none of us, nor are the people that we serve and support. So just notice and listen to one another. And then we'll come back and hear how those debrief conversations or how the breakouts went, and then we'll shift into some possibilities. But I'd love to hear, what are you noticing? What pain and suffering is evident today? So Matt, if you could go
I
ahead.
can make one quick comment before Matt puts this. Terry Heister has let us know she has no audio. So if you're in a breakout with Terry, I know she might not be able to talk.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Thanks for letting us know that. So Matt, if you'll go ahead and ship us off. It's always we've been doing this a year and a half, and it's still always fascinating to me that we zoom out, and Star Trek knew something a long time ago about how we would be zooming out and zooming back in.
Yep, I put the breakout question in the chat for everyone, and I will be sending you all off now.
Super. Good. Thanks, Matt.
No problem. Did you want to join one? Or are you gonna?
No, because I'm gonna be thinking about what's next, so I won't join mine. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't like that. That's the only problem with facilitating is I feel like it's harder to be in the breakouts
Yep. Yep.
where
Yep.
the juice is, where the meat is.
For sure. Well, I will float. So I'm actually gonna.
Good was nice to connect with you.
Refreshing.
Depressing? Did someone say depressing?
Refreshing.
No.
Refreshing. Oh, awesome. Well, that's different than depressing.
And depressing,
Well,
yes.
and depressing.
Thank you, Jim.
Well,
It's a little both.
we're gonna shift to possibility in just a second, but I want to take about 5 minutes or so and just hear what came out of the groups, what pain and suffering is still evident. I mean, this has been a year and a half, and what is still with us, and what are we seeing right now happening? Does anyone want to share? And we'll have to be brief on this because we don't have a lot of time in this next 30 minutes, but would anyone like to share?
I can share from our group. Can you hear me?
Yes, Diana, thank you.
Okay, good. We talked about a range of the pain that we're seeing from a lack of trust that some people have in whether somebody else is fully vaccinated or whether they can trust that they believe there's a virus, all of that, to a loss of work and that joyous contact that we're accustomed to having through our work, and the sharp reduction in that, and so that was also true. In addition, people mentioned things like losing people, certainly, and also becoming more aware of how close to the edge so many people are. Not necessarily homeless, but very close to feeling like you could be. So those were some of the topics that came up in our group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Did any other groups either resonate with that or have others that they want to add? Thank you, Diana.
We ended up, all three of us, feeling like the pandemic has really exacerbated division, and people not being willing to be more civil and seek common ground, and that maybe our personal isolation is causing isolation on a larger level, where we can choose more who to listen to and who to interact with.
Yeah, very interesting to have the isolation from the pandemic reinforce any echo chamber that we may already be in, and that kind of disconnection from each other. Yeah, who else would like to add?
I'll add. One of the things that Steve brought up was the division and conflict of, there's the home people and the office people. I'm not ready to go back to in person yet. Some people have already dived in and started doing things in person. I'm probably not going to do anything until September at the soonest. I'm actually writing my next blog post is called, "Are you ready for the September shuffle?" Because I think right after Labor Day, there's going to be a lot of chaos and confusion as companies call people back to work and other people are like, sorry, I already have another job, or I'm not going. Or if I have to, James mentioned travel. A lot of people do not want to travel for business. They say, I'm not going to go on a plane and go through airports or subways or whatever for a 2-hour meeting if I could do it on Zoom, right? I'd rather be home with my pet or my parents or my kids or whatever. So there's a lot of, everything is a decision now. Do I wear a mask? Do I distance? Is this a hug or a handshake situation? Everything is a stressful decision. I think people just burnt out just because the mental capacity it takes to do the simplest things is more than it's ever been before. So these are some of the things.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. We had a death in the family, and I just got back from Phoenix last night. And so we were in the airport, and I've traveled every year of my career. This is the first year I haven't traveled. It was the most stressful trip I've taken. It's like, okay, can I be near this person, near this person? So it's, yes, very, very, very more stressful because there's more energy to make all these decisions. Who else? What else came up in your conversations?
I was going to add on, it's kind of two ends of the spectrum of that isolation. We talked about, right, that disconnection, what it's created, and it's an awareness, right, of the importance of connectivity at a human level, that we appreciate technology for all it's for. And even some of us with children and those teens that grew up with it and being in college and not being able to interact, realize the importance of our loved ones, of spending time and putting our arm around them and just letting them know that we care, right? Because they could be hit by the pandemic, right? So it's kind of those two ends of the spectrum, and finding balance somewhere in between at the same time, not wanting to be connected because we're afraid of the vaccine, the virus and how powerful it could be. So it is stressful, but at the end, I feel one of the things that we talked about is that we're humans, and if we can find some way to create some connection to keep us going, even just a little bit, right? Just something.
Thank you, Kara, for saying that. So the disconnection again, but then, we're going to talk about this in a second, the silver lining. There's so much that comes out of it that helps us understand how important connection is. Well, before we move to possibility, I'll share with you, we have an assessment system that's been looking at 19 psychometrics of well-being and thriving. And we've been using it before the pandemic. We just started using it. We just built it a few years ago. But then the pandemic happened. In the middle of launching this tool, we started using it before the pandemic happened. So we were able to get, honestly, some pretty incredible information about, and this is from about 1,000 leaders around the world. And I thought I would just share from you just 5 things that I'm hearing over and over and over again through these measurable statistics, and then the qualitative conversations we've been having with people. And you brought some of them up, all around loss. So these are the losses. Loss of, and Kara just brought this one up, someone else did as well, loss of connection. And sometimes the connection is about relationships, literally losing people because of the pandemic. I imagine everyone on this call or in this meeting knows someone in their family, or has a friend who has been lost, who has died because of the pandemic, or is severely dealing with the consequences of the getting the virus or the after effects of it. So loss of connection, relationship. The second is loss of direction. The leaders that we're at least working with collectively having the sense of feeling unmoored. Like, I knew what I was doing and I knew why I was using my life energy in this way before, but now that this pandemic has happened, now I'm asking the question, why am I doing this? How do I want to use my life energy? And does this really matter to me? It's kind of this big reset, this big reflection. Loss of curiosity and appreciation. That may sound like a strange one, but what I have noticed, especially with all of our physical lockdowns, that there's been this more of a mental and emotional lockdown. I'm just going to do my work. I'm going to put my head down. I'm just going to work, and I'm going to endure it. And eventually this will hopefully be over. We thought it'd be over in 3 months, then it was 6 months, then it's 9 months, then it's a year. How long is this going to happen? So leaders who are highly engaged, doing their work, but just enduring it without this sense of gaining well-being from work. And I think Diana brought that up at the beginning, how important our work is as a mechanism to gain well-being and to gain connection. So that's the third. Loss of basic health behaviors. So I'm at Zoom, I'm sitting, I'm working as hard as I can. And so some of the self-care practices that I absolutely know work for me, for whatever reason, I'm overriding them. Now that's not everybody. Some people have actually upped their healthcare or their self-care practices. But in general, a lot of people have lost some of the basic practices that they know support as leaders their own well-being. And then the fifth one is loss of identity. And I think to me that is the deepest. It's the real question of who am I now? Who am I now? And that's a deeper question. I think underneath all of this is a sense of such deep uncertainty. When all of us in this room, I know the Leadership Forum has talked about the VUCA world for many, many decades now. And yet to touch in and feel that existential angst, that existential uncertainty in our bones, to know the pandemic has shown us we actually really don't know what it, if we thought we did, which is going to say the word VUCA, but we thought, oh, but we really know how the future is going to play out. We don't know. We really don't know. Nobody does. And when we get there, for many people, that creates a lot of anxiety. All right, let's just shake that off. Everyone put your hands in the air. Shake that off. We are going to shift to possibility because, as Cara was already bringing up, with literally everything, when there is this sense of pain and suffering, there is always that reveals the possibility, new pathways for evolving and for our own well-being. And so I want to move into another breakout session. And this time the question is, what possibilities or pathways for evolution and well-being are emerging? So maybe you haven't touched it yet, but you're starting to see it. Cara mentioned an example of one of, boy, we're realizing how precious connection is. But what else are you noticing as possibilities and pathways, actual pathways for our evolution and well-being are starting to grow in our lives, in workplaces, in our nations, that may not have grown had we not gone through this global experience together and continue to go through it. So we'll be in random breakouts again. We're going to take exactly 10 minutes because I know we've got a hard stop in not too long from now. So enjoy the conversation. Please do make sure everyone gets a chance to speak, and then we'll come back and hear what came out of that conversation. Thank you, Matt.
No problem. I will join another breakout.
Feels like this is going fast.
Yeah, the time goes by really fast.
How was your breakout?
And I think there's this opportunity for clarity in that, and just knowing what you need, not just who you are. And I also shared, in the coaching work I do, I'm noticing even with the most tech savvy leaders, they are so hungry for guidance on not just who they are, who each of those people are, what those working norms look like, and also just have real feedback conversations in Zoom, because in some ways it feels safer and in other ways it doesn't. It's interesting. So I think there's opportunity for clarity and new dynamic in terms of communication and norms.
That's great. That's great. So and we're seeing the same thing, this whole opportunity to reset. How do we want to work together, and what kind of culture do we want to have? What norms do we want to be, and how can work be a source of growth and well-being and learning? We've been talking about that for decades, and many organizations that are progressive have been on that path, but I think the pandemic has absolutely accelerated it in a huge way. So thanks for bringing that up. Who else? What else came out of your conversations? Nancy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we had an interesting, we reside in the questions sometimes, right? And an interesting question came up in our group. We can talk about pathways and possibilities, and the question is what will stick and what will not. We don't have an answer, but it's an interesting question in all of this. Prior to that question, we talked about, possibilities and pathways, actual pathways. So the whole digital pathway is just amazing. And personally, I think that'll stick, use more digital pathways. And we all talked about that, meet on Zoom versus getting on a plane to fly to a 2-hour meeting. Some amazing small business innovations to keep afloat for those who were able, to do so. We talked about still relative uncertainty, especially if you're in a global environment. And what is this pandemic going to do in the future with mutations as it continues to live, because it does mutate. in terms of trends of people in their own personal living and real estate or what they're doing in their homes, there's a trend right now for to seek less densely populated areas. If you know, you talk to a realtor, which I happened to do recently, and then, you know, she says high rises are out, people are wanting the suburbs, and then you're seeing when they buy a new home, they're putting their money into their backyards and their porches, stuff like that. So that's what we talked about. And also physical fitness has improved for a couple of people.
That's great. That's great. You all had a lot in that conversation. So we're finding the same thing as far as organizations that think they're going to go back to the way they were. Very few organizations, we believe, will go back to a completely in-person work model, especially global companies. That we have now learned that we can do good work using technology, and so more of a hybrid, which saves on cost in some ways, saves on wear and tear of the body. So there's lots of goodness. It helps us connect in ways that we weren't connecting maybe around the world through Zoom, even though there is this Zoom exhaustion exists and is real. But that's great. For anyone who's interested in more about the wellness real estate portion, I'm on the board of a nonprofit called the Global Wellness Institute, and there's a whole research arm that we are doing right now on wellness communities and wellness real estate. So a whole body of research, and it's all like free for anybody who wants it. So if you go to globalwellnessinstitute.org, you'll see whole like science papers on that. Really good stuff out there. Awesome. So a lot came out of that one. Anyone else want to comment on what you notice as possibilities? Anyone who has spoken?
Yeah, I'll
John?
jump in real quick. You know, I hope that coming out of this, we acknowledge how interconnected we all are as a global one ecosystem and society, and how do we learn from this experience so that we can apply lessons into the future, because there's going to be ongoing interdependent challenges that we really need to address. And hopefully this can be seen as a practice opportunity for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a practice opportunity. I mean, it really is. And I am right there with you. If there's one thing I wish too, it's that when I think of what can we evolve, if we can realize that we are an interdependent system, and that our not just our behavior, but our consciousness does impact each other. And so what I'm thinking and doing over here does have an effect, not just on each other, but on the environment, our earth. And, so that understanding of a much bigger holistic being that we are part of, I think is a huge contribution that this pandemic can serve for all of us. I'm aware of the time. I said to Matt on the break, this has gone fast. We could go for 2 hours, and I know we only have 1 hour. So I just really appreciate you all showing up, and I appreciate you engaging in a dialogue. I know you normally have presentations, and this was something different. So thank you for being in, and I hope it was supportive for you as well.
Renee, thank you very, very much. And just to show the interdependency, I don't know if Joel wants to say this or Ann, but I think we have a record number of people who have already registered for the summit. And how many are from other countries? Ann, what's the scoop on that?
We have 121 people registered from 24 different countries.
Yeah.
Wow.
Something we would never have accomplished without a pandemic. So really diverse audience this year, and it should be very interesting to have conversations like this with that group.
Renee, again, we really appreciate you facilitating a real dialogue today. Appreciate it.
It was really a joy. So thank you for inviting me.
Okay.
Let's
Joel or
burn
Ann or Matt, do you have a last comment?
Go out and sign up for the summit if you haven't. It's going to be great.
Yeah, this is great. For those of you who don't know this by now, there will be 4 dynamic leadership forum discussions like this leading up to the summit. And once again, we want to have as many people participate as possible, so you don't have to pay anything to do this. So
No.
thank you all. On
Okay.
that note,
Nice work, everybody.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great to
thank
see
you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Good to see you, Joel and the rest
Thank
of
you.
us. I
Yes,
still
good
burn
to
the
see everybody.
PowerPoints with the mask. That's-
you.